is the Revisionary Podcast with your host, Juan Carlos. The Revisionary Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Revisionary Podcast. I'm your host, Juan Carlos, and thank you for coming on. I'm actually really excited today because I get to speak to Todd Montesi. Todd is one of those comedians who's self-efficient. He kind of does a little bit of everything. He runs shows, he runs a sketch comedy show, he runs things on Instagram Live, and he's even been on the HBO TV show Crashing. So Todd has kind of done it all. And I appreciate that he's taken time to speak to us today. Todd is such a nice guy. Like, he's one of those people that from the moment I've met him, he made me feel extremely comfortable. And I love listening to Todd perform because Todd has this, like, very unique voice. Like, there's no confusing Todd's voice once you hear it. It's one of those voices that you're like, yup, that's Todd every single time. Today, Todd's going to speak to us a little bit about his comedy career and all the things that he's done to get to this point, and maybe what he would have done differently if he had the knowledge that he has now. So why don't we go ahead and see if we can get Todd on the line. Hey, Todd, how are you?
Hey, how's it going, dude?
It's going very well. Thank you so much for being here today. Our revisionaries are so excited to hear from you. What have you been up to? How have you been?
I'm all right, man. You know what? With this pandemic and this lockdown, I feel like I'm doing more work than I did before because, like, I got my comedy show, like Instagram Live talk show at night, which is 10 p.m. every night. And then I've got my web series, PN and Friends, where I'm editing like new episodes. And then I've got like an Zoom house party show, which is like a sort of like a competition stand-up show that we stream on Twitch. I'm editing that as a TV series for YouTube. So I'm like, what am I doing here? I've got like 2 web series. I've got like a talk show. I've got like, what am I doing? I should just, I don't know what's going on here. Like, why am I still poor?
That's a humble flex I ever heard of. I'm too successful right now. Things are going a little too well in my comedy career.
Well, I mean, like, you know what? I'm building my ecosystem. I feel like I need to, like, because like with this downtime, like the traditional routes of like putting your content out there has been disrupted. And with disruption, you got to find a new ways to do it. Like I feel like
Absolutely.
Where you're like if you're like an outsider in this industry, like if you have talent, but like you're not in like the system, like if you're not in their, sort of like ecosystem,
right.
It's like the prime time to just like do your own thing and build your own, platform and build your own like, audience and ecosystem. So I've been doing that and been doing good with that though, but I'm not really, success is a big word. I feel like I'm content, not content. But yeah, I'm content with my content. How about that?
I mean, that's fine. Look, at the end of the day, right, a lot of this it's all about your personal effort. Like, there's no, like, people think that there's like a metric, like, oh, at this point, you are now a successful comedian. And that's not necessarily true.
It doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist.
Success is up to every individual. There are people who've been in a bunch of movies, but they've never been the star of the movie, so they don't consider themselves successful comics. And then there are people who've been performing on the road for 30 years, 40 years, and headlining shows, and they're not in any movies, but they consider themselves successful. So it's really up to the individual.
Yeah, also, too, it's like, as long as you're doing what you want to do and getting paid for it, and, like, you're still able to do it, like, without having problems like, oh, I got to worry about this, I got to worry about that, then that is success, technically, but there's always like goalposts and there's always platforms for yourself because you want to maximize your potential, and also B, there's always, it is a capitalist society where it's like your worth is measured on like, points, what I'm saying? And whoever's got the most points wins. So it's like, there's that little weird aspect in the back of your mind, but it's everybody. That's everybody.
No, you're absolutely right. Let me ask you this, because I find that like different comedians, they have different mediums they prefer. Like me personally, I prefer being on stage. Like I just prefer live stand-up, right? There's some people who feel more comfortable in the sketches. Some people prefer the Zoom show. So where do you feel you're happiest?
Well, like all, I feel like I have like a unique sense of humor, and I feel like I actually do like creating and producing. I like working with other talent, and I also like performing like by myself, doing stand-up, where it's like I could just be unfiltered, where I could just go up and just have like my kind of let my id go. You know what I'm saying? Where like in other platforms, like say sketch or writing or directing comedy or producing comedy, it's like the Apollo versus Dionysus thing, where it's like sort of like form versus like unrestraint in art, where it's like stand up, I could just be like Dionysus and just fucking like unrestrained and just be like, all right, what's coming out of my head? What's the, where like in the other aspects, it's like, all right, I can exercise that sort of like form, structure, tightness, and like, editing, chisel. I do that too with my stand up, but like, I feel like I focus more on that on like the other aspects, like say with my like web series or my content that I edit and stuff.
All right. And you mentioned that you have a unique sense of humor. Would you like to tell our audience a little bit about us?
Well, since this is not a visual podcast, I am black, so I've got a weird voice. Like, people are like, what's going on with that guy? He's got a vowel at the end of his last name. Is he? I don't know. Maybe he's Southern Italian. No, I'm a black man. I've got an interesting voice. I've got an interesting cadence. Like, I've got an interesting like way of delivering like a punchline. You know what I'm saying? Where it's kind of goofy, but also kind of like, yo, wait, what? Did he just hit me from left field?
You talk about your voice because I remember, just for a little background, Todd and I met last year during a comedian softball event. We were on the same team. A lot of fun.
Pre-COVID, right?
Pre-COVID, right. This is like way before COVID. And I remember Todd invited me out to one of his shows. He asked me to perform, which was dope. I really enjoyed doing the room. And I got to watch Todd do stand-up for the first time. And I won't go into his joke because that's his business if he wants to share it. But he does this voice about like, he does this joke about his voice and how people can recognize them, so he can't like steal from anyone.
Yeah.
And it was one of my favorite jokes because given Todd's unique voice.
Yeah, I'm stuck. This is like I was born to do comedy. I can't do like I can't run for president with this voice. Ladies and gentlemen, need to change things. Like I just don't sound serious with this voice.
Maybe American Idol. I could see you sing. Can you sing?
I believe the children are our future.
No, okay. Next. When I was a kid, I grew up watching this show called Don Francisco. I remember it used to come on every Saturday. They had this thing called El Chacal. And it was like this like hooded figure, which now that I'm thinking about it isn't appropriate. But anywho, he'd come out in like a black hood. And whenever someone was singing badly, he'd come up with what looked like a hook and would like pull them off stage by the neck. And that's what that just reminded me.
Like the Sandman. It's like that version of the Sandman. Yeah.
Oh, is that a thing? Okay. I didn't know.
Like the Sandman from the Apollo, like Showtime at the Apollo. Yes. It was a show. Have you ever seen that show? Or
Yeah.
So they'd have like a guy named the Sandman who, if you were bombing, he would come out with a hook and then, or he would like dance and shuffle and be like,
get off stage. All right. Let's get into it. So, Todd, the stage is yours. Go ahead. Tell us your story as it happened.
Well, I think it's kind of a macro story because like I've been doing stand-up for like I think 22 years, like comedy, 22 years since I was 17. I'm 39, and this is actually like my sort of anniversary month when I started doing comedy. Like being a comedian and being a performer, you always think about like ways you could like sort of adjust, where you could improve, and like also like a big question is like when people go like, "Oh, you've done comedy for so long. How come you're not famous? How come I don't know you?" And there's like a lot of different aspects about it. There's like, again, you can be the most talented person in the world, but there's an element of luck that comes with it. And not just luck, but also like believing in yourself, developing your voice and stuff. I definitely think I could have like, I always think about that where I'm like, what could I have done to like maybe maximize my potential like earlier or like been out there earlier, more mainstream. And like, there's been two sides of it. One's like the more positive side where I'm like, well, you know what? Like I should have just like worked more on myself and believed in myself to like actually produce content. It's like, cause I did like shorts and stuff, but I didn't do it regularly like I should, like I've had like, for example, I have a YouTube page that I started, I think around like 2008, and I was pumping out like an short a week. But then I got jumped and hit by a truck, and then it stopped because I was like injured. Now I'm thinking like, oh, I should have just kept on like doing that, But instead, I went and did like a short, which was like first PN and Friends thing that I did, PN content that I did, which is like my web series, and that taught me how to like be a filmmaker, because I was like, oh, I got into like a festival, which was great, and then I did like some other stuff like Hipster Vice. I did some shorts, but it wasn't like regularly like, oh, you know what? I need to do this like doom. Where like years later, after I've done like some stuff like so on HBO's Crashing. I'm trying to pitch this project PN, right, which is like my sitcom idea, my sitcom that I've been thinking about for like 15, 20 years since I was like 17 and stuff. And like I tried to pitch it around, and like industry people didn't understand it because they were like, I don't get it. How come this character's living in a bathroom? Like that makes no sense. And it's like, oh, why is this guy living with his grandma at like in his 30s? Was he in a divorce? And I'm like, you guys don't get how poor people are. So it got to the point where like I actually created it myself and developed it myself. And like it, you know, it got me to become a better filmmaker. It got me to become a better producer. It got me to like become a better director, where I could like work with people and understand like their motivations and help get their performances out in a comfortable situation. And I just kept on thinking to myself, you know what? I wish I didn't listen to anybody, and I wished I just went gung ho and did that at 17 or 18. But you know what I mean, though. There's elements of me where I wish I had that mentality, was like where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to listen to anybody. I'm not going to play the rules of the industry or the rules of the game, which is already made up. You know, like no, you know, they're trying to sell products. You know what I'm saying? And like, they want to use you within that context of selling those products. You know, they don't really care about you as an artist. I just wish I had more confidence myself in my comedic voice early, where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this web series now in 2009 instead of like 2019 or whatever, 2018.
Do you feel that they're trying to put you in a box and you feel that you don't check those boxes for them? Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah. I mean, just being like a African-American performer that sounds like this, you're already excluded from like the mainstream of like what Black comics should look like or sound like. You know, I also have an eyebrow piercing, so that already like excludes me again. That's another thing I was saying before, like where I was saying, like there's the other side where I could have just joined the dark side and just been like, fuck it, sell out, you know, say whatever, do jump through hoops, you know, be, hey, that's my friend, that's, you know, I don't know that guy, but let me just retweet this person and, you know.
Right.
You know. So there's that element too. So there's like the two-way street where you could have gone. Honestly, at the end of the day, to me, this is what it is. Like I'm content where I'm at right now. Like, and also like with my web series now, say if I was famous earlier and I did this project like 10 years ago, like I couldn't like engage with what's going on now with the whole like pandemic, because I'm using my PN series and we're doing remote content, we're doing remote shooting. I feel like we're doing a thing where we're making really good, timely content that later on people are going to be like, wow, this is amazing. This is kind of cool that these crazy people did like a funny web series during a pandemic in the middle of New York. And we do a lot of weird stuff with it too. Like we you know, you'll see. But I mean, it would have been great to be rich and famous and successful, like, and be like, yeah, I'm living in my mansion, guys. So, hey, we could all go through the pandemic together. All right. All right. I gotta go. My butler's here.
Do you have any like specific examples where someone might have told you like, oh, be more Black, or you have to fit this stereotype? Like, have you experienced that on the stand-up scene?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had like, I remember when I started out, I had like veteran comedians who were like, yo, let me write for you, man. You got a white voice. I'll write for you all that stuff. And I'm just like, you know, I don't want to go that route. I don't want to be, hey, what's up, guys? It's Todd the White Guy voice. Let's do it. Siggy hang, my catchphrase, Siggy hang. They're like, what? What's that mean? I don't know. I got a white voice.
Let me touch on this for a second, because it's something that's good. What does that even mean? What is a white voice? Like, is that an actual thing? Like, because it would seem to me that what is considered a white voice is just not consistent with the stereotypical inner city urban, I guess, accent, if you will. But
right.
Do you believe in a quote unquote white voice?
Of course not, but I feel that everyone else does, probably. That's why. I mean, again, people put each other in categories. People like, because there's a lot of people, there's not enough time in life, so people put each other in categories immediately. So if they meet you, you're a bigger Black dude, they'll be like, oh, okay, so you play football, or you played football? You know, like that's how people sort of, and then once you talk to them and you become a specific person and not an individual, instead of just like a a macrocosm, then it's like, oh wow, this is more than like this is not just some guy out there. It's not just some random black guy. It's just this is actually a person. This is how people think, but it. Problem is in entertainment, like again, it's about pushing products as quick as possible. So it's like if you have to play that tap dance, you got to tap dance. I just never had that in me to tap dance. Even when I tried to tap dance, I tap danced poorly.
I get that. I completely understand because when I first started out, the first person to give me an opportunity, I'm not gonna say their name, but I'm very grateful to them. They started putting me up in Harlem. You know what I sound like. And first and foremost, I love Harlem. I was born in Harlem. I wasn't raised there, but I feel like it really shaped me as a comedian because when I first started doing stand-up, I did not know what I was doing. And the people up in Harlem were very unforgiving.
Right.
I remember I had done I started out doing a few of those bringer shows is what they call them. For those of you who don't know what a bringer show is, what they do is when you're a brand new comedian, clubs will say, hey, we'll let you perform at our club, but you have to bring in a certain amount of people and sell a certain amount of tickets. So I did a few of those at the clubs. The clubs are very, very forgiving. I sit there, it's like people are laughing like, oh, I'm hilarious. I'm ready for Comedy Central. Like, sign me now. Start doing indie shows up in Harlem. And those audiences were very brutally honest. They would sit there and stare at me and just make me understand that the material that I was slinging was just not there yet. It wasn't funny. But I think that that's very important because it helped me learn techniques to become a better comedian. And I still think I have a lot of work to do. But I learned a lot from it. So I'm just going to throw this back at you. Do you feel that you've gone through a similar journey? By not checking those boxes, where did you feel that you went and grew as a comedian? And what did you learn? How did that come about?
Well, the funny thing is that when I started at 17 years old, though, you couldn't really do bringers with kids because you're kids. You know what I'm saying? It's hard. I remember, I was like, I didn't know anything. So I'd call up a comedy club and I'd be like, hey, how do you get up and do comedy here?
Right.
And do open mics. So I was like, all right. So I did open mics basically for my first year and stuff. And then afterwards, I did an audition for the Uptown at the Apollo, amateur night at the Apollo. Right. So the Apollo, the world famous Apollo in Harlem, has an amateur night, right? Wednesday nights. And the thing is, it's cool because you get an opportunity in front of a crowd. Here's the thing: comedians never do well, okay? Unless you're Martin Lawrence. I think only Martin Lawrence might be the only comedian that killed his night at the amateur at the Apollo. But notoriously, if you're a comedian, they'll boo you off because that's mandatory, and you have to be a really great singer. So singers they love, especially if you're a kid. Singers. So I did that. I got booed off, and I was like, oh man, it was not even booed off. It's just they give you that first moment where you're just like, all right, show me that you're a superstar. Because that's what they want. If you're going to go up there and tell jokes, you have to be a superstar or do the whole big, like professional wrestling where it's this is my character. It's established. This is what I do. Boom, 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 boom. When you start out, it's you don't know about that. You're still developing your voice. It takes at least 3 years to understand that,
Right.
I bombed after that, and then I thought to myself, do I still want to continue comedy? And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be the comedian I want to be. I'm just going to be I'm going to try to be like Carlin or whatever, like Lenny Bruce or Dice. I'm just going to be hard, man. So I was doing that. Went back to the mics, was doing edgy material and stuff. And some people were like, yo, that's not cool. Some people were like, oh, keep on going. I'm just being that, gung ho. It hurt me in the beginning because here's the thing. You're from New York, right?
Yes.
A lot of comics from outside of New York, they started in smaller places where they could develop their act in peace. Right. You go to you're say you're from Cleveland, small town, Akron, Ohio, or something. Same 20 buddies. Same 20 little crowd. You could develop an audience and stuff, and you can develop your material. And when you come here, even if your material is not as strong as the New York scene, at least you still have a leg up where it's oh, I know the beats. I know the constructions of being a professional comedian. If you're from New York and you start doing stand-up, you're on your own. You're already in the belly of the beast. So even if you're trying to develop, people are going to judge you even at open mics when they go, oh, that guy doesn't have it. Oh, that guy has it. Oh, but that guy's crazy. And you're 17 years old. You're like, you can't just label someone at 17. Like, what are you going to do when they're 27 or 37? You think people evolve with their act, you know? It's just, so it's still kind of funny where I meet people like I haven't seen in 20 years. You're like, oh, wow, Todd, you've changed. Your act's changed. And I'm like, yeah, I was 17. I'm 37 now. It makes no sense if I'm still doing Dawson Creek jokes. What's wrong with you?
Hold up. You were doing Dawson Creek jokes?
But they were really bad Dawson Creek jokes. They were like, you know, I think I had a joke where I was like, hey, anybody here watch Dawson Creek? There's no black people. I don't get it, huh? Something like that.
I'm just saying, Todd, I don't want to wait for my life to be over. No, I'm just kidding. All right, moving on. So you mentioned how you feel that people who develop in smaller towns have a leg up, right? But I find, in my experience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that like even when like I first started, like, you know, when I was 6 months out, 1 month out, or a year out, whatever it was, if I performed in a smaller city and I met a comic who was also, you know, had the same amount of time, I generally felt that I had a better handle of it because I came up in New York. So do you disagree with that, or?
See, that's the flip side of the coin. You start doing comedy in New York, you're going to get like immediately sharper in the outside because you're already like, it's like playing basketball, right? Like, you know, in Europe, where like the younger kids are like playing in professional leagues, like Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic was playing professional basketball in Europe at 15, right?
Right.
So when he came to America, when he got drafted, he's like 18. Everyone's like, oh, this guy's scoring 30 points a game, right? I don't get it. Yeah, because it's like college basketball, right? College basketball in Kentucky is professional basketball in Europe, you know? It's like, of course, they're going to have a leg up because they're actually playing for money. They're actually playing like for their livelihood, where in college basketball, they're playing to get like seen. You know, they're not, you know what I'm saying? So there's that aspect. It's like college basketball versus professional, you know, like, of course, you start in New York, you're going to get better quicker. You know, that's the advantage. Like, you're already like in a big town, so you'll get seen quicker, but like, which could be a disadvantage as well if you're not ready. But if you're ready and like you get seen, you could get on quicker. Like Eddie Murphy, right? Eddie Murphy, by the way, he did comedy in probably the golden age, you know, like the 1970s, where there's not a lot of comics out there. So it wasn't oversaturated. It was contained. It was like a nice contained community. So a 16-year-old can develop in front of an audience and not have like haterade from, like, say, a 30-year-old. Like, there'd be more chance of that 30-year-old helping out a 16-year-old than, say, like 1999 or, you know, 2009 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Well, screw that guy, you know.
Are you that 30-year-old dishing out the haterade nowadays?
Nah, man, I don't do. Nah, man, I'm very collaborative. Like, that's another thing too. Like, because I feel like I've been excluded in so many places that I like with my show. I give at least every person at least one shot to do my show. Like, this a comedy show, when it was on, you know, pre-pandemic, it was a cool East Village show that went on for like 12 years, and like we had professional comics, but we mixed it up too, because like we had like newer comics and stuff. We had like, you know, so we gave people shots, you know, where it was like, hey, you're a newer comic, you could get up with like an established comic too. And that's another thing too, where like comics can see each other and go, okay, you're a professional comedian, or you're one of us. So it's like, so next time that newer comic, they'll have more faith in themselves when they do a bringer show and go, you know what, I'm not gonna do a bringer show. I'm gonna hang out at this comedy club because I know that guy. He saw me do well. You know, try to get in through there.
So this is one thing I will say about Todd for those of you guys listening. Like, I was joking with him, you know, about the haterade, but Todd, like as I mentioned earlier before, he had never seen me do comedy. He knew nothing about my stand-up. He didn't even know if I was funny.
He looks funny, though. He looks very funny. So I figured, you know what, at least people will laugh. I'm kidding.
Right. But, I mean, you knew nothing about me. And yet, despite that, he gave me an opportunity. What Todd didn't know was that because of circumstances with my day job, I actually had not been able to get up in a while. So he actually gave me an opportunity to come back after a little bit of a layoff. I was a little rusty, but I think overall I still had a good set.
Yeah. Yeah, again, my show's like a hangout show too. So it's like, this is what I hate. I hate when people like go like, it's a free comedy show, but you know, if you bomb, that's it. Your career's over. It's just like, you know, we're all developing. You know, it's like, it's okay to develop new material. It's okay to like take a break and then like get back into it. It's not like, I mean, we're all, it's, I just wish I had that mentality. Again, that comes with age though, but I kind of wish I had that mentality when I was like younger instead of like older now. But again, that's maturity through age. Of course, you're not going to, no, you're not going to be, like Benjamin Buttons and coming out like, I'm so wise. And like, no one likes that guy. They would kill you. They would try to kill you if you were that 15-year-old wise Buddha.
That's true. So you've kind of touched upon this a little bit, but let's tie this up in a nice little box. You've kind of walked us through your journey a bit here. Let's go back and tell us, if you could start over again, right? Mm-hmm. Retell your story and tell us, what would you have done different? When would you have done it? And and let's work through that.
Well, there's two ways. I feel like there's a fork in the road. Like, do I go like do you want me to go to the negative part, the bad side, or you want me to do both? Okay. Both. Okay, let me start with the good, right? And the good side, if I had to start all over again, I'd probably try to produce content like immediately. I'd probably try to be more outgoing or try to be more networking. I don't know. I think maybe I was like, again, being from New York, we have a mentality that's different from everyone outside. Where it's just like, yo, I'm from the hardest. I grew up in New York City. I remember New York during the crack era when I was a baby. Okay, I can do anything. There's that factor. Maybe when I started out, I could have been more like hanging out and gregarious and stuff, and like I didn't really do that till later. Again, like I was 17 years old. Again, I grew up in an inner city, so it's like, and also an immigrant household, because I'm half Haitian, half Jamaican, so it's like immigrant households, they're more reserved when it comes to like outsiders and stuff because of the trauma of colonialization.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe I could have been more like networky in a weird way, where like but I don't know. I mean, like even then, I developed that later. But I definitely think but ultimately, I definitely think I wish I did more like filmmaking work. I wish I was like, yo, you know what? Because I did want to do, like, I wanted to be on SNL. I wanted to, like, write skits. Like, I remember that. I was like, I had, like, a lot of ideas for projects. I wished while I was doing stand-up, I was also, like, pushing for that, too. So maybe even doing stuff like improv and, like, trying to get in on, I didn't have any money, though. But maybe when I had, like, that part-time job I had as a messenger, maybe I should have just focused that little money on like trying to get an improv class or something like that to network there and just be like, hey, I'm 17, but I want to do all this stuff.
You mentioned, networking, which is something you wish I had done more of. And I don't know if you want to go into this. If you don't, that's fine. But was there anyone who you crossed paths with early on in your career who you specifically wish you had networked with, or like any lost opportunities like that?
I don't know. I mean, like, that's another problem too. If I was more networking, I'd probably hang out at comedy clubs directly and not do open mics. Because, like, I definitely feel like open mics have led me to be more independent, but also maybe more alternative and independent. So, like, I went more for like getting laughs from comics and getting laughs from like the band, getting laughs from like sort of like fringer people or people who are like more jaded with like traditional comedy, where if I was just hanging out at clubs, I probably could have like learned more of the beats of like, club comedy sooner. It's almost like learning kung fu, where it's like, oh, like I learned this branch of kung fu and I didn't learn the traditional kung fu, or I learned Jeet Kune Do, like from Bruce Lee's like newer style, instead of like learning like Wing Chun, like I learned Wing Chun through Jeet Kune Do. Boy, this podcast is becoming very.
So I grew up playing sports. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, where is this going? Are you even speaking English anymore? I just want to make sure. Yeah.
All right, no, Jeet Kune Do was like Bruce Lee's philosophy in like martial arts. He developed the martial arts where his Jeet Kune Do is more about like where traditional martial arts or kung fu they have like traditional like rigid like forms. Jeet Kune Do is about like opening up those forms and like for anticipation for like real life fighting, like mixed martial arts, where it's not just like, oh, I'm going to do a block like this block. I'm going to do like a block, I'm going to do this block in my own way, even if it doesn't have to be a perfect. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm kind of, you get what I'm saying, right? I'm not.
there are words coming out of your mouth in a logical English sequence.
Right. See, but you get what I'm saying. I'm saying like I learned the way I developed in my comedy was more like an alternative way than a traditional way, which is like the club comedy. And maybe if I focused more on the club comedy, where I was like, oh, hanging out, like networking, hanging out, watching club comics, and then trying to emulate that form instead of like, the other form, then maybe, maybe it would have been better for me, or maybe I'd be more successful than like now, or maybe I'd be within that system.
I think that's a double-edged sword that cuts both ways, right? Because on one hand, I think that working in the clubs is great because you generally get a good audience. You generally get an audience that's not necessarily from just New York. So you get people from all over the country and sometimes all over the world. And in that sense, it's great. But I also think that working the indie shows has forced me to become a better comedian, right? Because I feel like, especially when it's a surprise indie show, like when people go to a comedy club, they go there because they want to laugh. Like they're actively trying to have fun. Sometimes, you showed up at an indie show at a bar. These people didn't even know that comedy was happening. And now you're like intruding on their night. So I feel like I'm fighting tooth and nail trying to get these laughs. And I feel like that kind of forced me to develop in a way that's different than, when you're at the clubs.
Well, that's the thing too, though, because like I learned my comedy through like the tooth and nail thing. And then when I went to a real audience, like a traditional comedy club, I was too aggressive because I'm like, yeah, man. So like I talk fast and I do like all this stuff, and people be like, it might go over heads, until I learned the balance of like both, where it's like, okay, now I understand comedy, so now I can just like play different aspects in different like areas and different circumstances. But I get what you're saying though. Like I had the opposite problem. That's why when I did the comic strip audition, and it'd just be like, what the hell is this? Like I might be talking about Jeet Kune Do and like Kung Fu, and you're like, what?
I think it works for you. And I also think like it's cool because I think that you were just 20 years ahead of your time. Because if you look now, like that whole indie scene and that alt scene, it's exploding right now. And there's so many good comics who are coming out of that scene who have a non-traditional form of stand-up.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I've done like I've known a lot of those performers too. Like Chelsea Peretti. I knew I gave her spots in my shows. Pete Holmes, I've given spots to. Like I bumped into a lot of them too. But like I felt like there used to be a place called Rafifi, where it was like the alternative room, like comedy room mecca for like the 2000s, and a lot of people like developed there. Like Nick Kroll had a show, Chelsea Peretti, all that stuff.
Right.
And like I never got through over there. I never really thought about getting through there. I mean, I guess maybe if I hung out there and like did a game more, but like the thing is, like it was a very white space and stuff, and it wasn't like yeah. But I respect it, but like it definitely was like even like certain aspects, like UCB, rest in peace, UCB. Like over there, and like I remember like they treat comedy like it was like a temple where like you go in there, and then he'd be like, "Oh, is this a comedy show?" They shush you like, "Shh, there's improv on stage." What, guys? So yeah, so I never really connected to that. I go to the UCB. There used to be a cool open mic called Boat Sting late on Thursday nights that I go to, and like you'd see like Andy Richter was there. Like you'd have like SNL people just dropping by, just working out like stuff. Like a young audience that like a lot of those people in the audience were basically students of UCB, where they got like a free show, and like they could get to go up. It was like a loose mic. It was like a secret mic, but it was a cool mic. And seeing that was cool because I was like, okay, I'll go there for that. But like other stuff, I was just like, I've always been like sort of into like the more outro stuff of comedy, the comedy scene, or like the comedy scene that's like not connected with traditional means,
When you first started doing comedy, let me backtrack a little bit here. For those who are listening, if you don't know anything about comedy, oftentimes when you're doing an open mic, there's a requirement that you have to buy, a drink, generally an alcoholic drink. It's just, it comes with the culture. So
support the bar, right? Yeah,
you support the bar. So if you've ever wondered why so many comedians drink a lot, It's because it's part of the culture from like the beginning.
Yeah.
That's just how you get started.
Yeah.
But you were 17 when you started, so legally you could not purchase alcohol. So how was that?
Well, there were free open mics back then too, and there were like some spaces like Surf Reality and Collective Unconscious where they weren't mics. They're basically performance room spaces, and you just paid like $3 and did a set.
Got it.
So there were like different places and stuff. This was like back in 98, 99. And you know what? I ran a mic or two that was like charged for like a minute. It was like $3. A place called Stinky Lulu's. Oh man, like 2000, 2001 and stuff. But yeah, I mean, sooner or later, I just started producing my own venues and shows and stuff. So, and those shows were basically to get an audience, and then I book comics and stuff, and the audience would just have to buy like a drink or two.
It's funny listening to these stories because I wanted to do comedy back in 2000, but I was still in middle school. So
Very young. I forgot about that. Way younger than me.
Yeah. So I wish I had met you because I wonder if you would have given me stage time. Little 10-year-old me, like, let's get it.
Probably. You and Pete.
I would have been headlining your show 2 weeks in.
Yeah, but then you'd be like an asshole. You'd be like, yeah, man, I'm the funniest 10-year-old in America. I'm going to do your shows anymore. I'm going to do SNL. Peace out, Todd. I'm a Nickelodeon.
Yeah. I would have peaked after all that. You know how that goes.
Yeah, but at least you'd still be famous, so you could be on Cameo, like selling out, like, hey guys, remember me? I'm a 10-year-old comedian. So I'll say happy birthday to you for $5.
You know what? I'm not mad at it. Like at this point, if I peaked at Cameo, that's a good career. I'd call that a good career.
Man, I'll take it.
Can I tell you something? So this is funny. It's funny to me anyway. You watch the Disney Channel actors, right? Like they have, and like, you know, those adult actors?
Yeah.
No shade to any of them. Like, this is not what this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if you're an adult actor on a Disney Channel show, like specifically one of those TV shows, you're not the star. Like
Disney's the star.
You're right. The Disney's the star. The child is the star. You're not the star. Like if that's the role that you're playing, like you know, you're probably towards the tail end of your career or the beginning or some like equilibrium. So I just filmed my first commercial, which was pretty dope. Being on set, but that's kind of what it felt like. I played the dad for a child's board game, and I'm sitting there like, wait a minute. How is this how I'm starting my career? Isn't this where you're supposed to end your career?
It's funny though, like when you get to that age where you're just like, yeah, I'm young. I was like in middle school in the 2000s, and you're like, wait, I'm a dad in a board game commercial. Damn it, self-awareness.
Yeah. The worst part about it is I'm watching the kids and I'm like, why? Where did your life go better than me? Why are you 11, 10, and we're both doing our first commercial together? What's up with that?
Because he has parents that believe in pimping them. That's why.
You know what my problem was? I too had immigrant parents. I was like, I want to be an artist. They're like, yeah, we don't want you to support you in your 30s. I was like, you're right.
Yeah. I was raised by my grandparents, so it's all like, doctor, right? Nothing? That's a waste. I got enough grandkids.
Oh man, it's funny how life has worked out. All right, so let me
but I just want to do quick too, though. Like, so there's also the dark side too, like the so the other road is like, I hate to say this though, but it seems like assholes do really well in show business. You know, it seems like those types of personalities. What if I was like more of that guy? What if I was like that type of guy where it's like, where you go like, all right, let me just use people and do whatever I can to go ahead. That's always too like an aspect where you go, what if I did that? But it's not in my personality, I think. It
might be. Who knows? I thought we were doing Batman.
Some darkness in his subconscious.
Nah, see, I think that's the problem. Like you are a nice guy. Like I don't think that's you. And I will say too, with those people who do that, I think that like a lot of it, it's not necessarily how they treat people aspect of it, but is that an aspect of that personality type is that it makes you aggressive. You're not afraid. So sometimes I feel like people like, and I'm going to put myself in this group, because sometimes I'm nice and I feel like I miss out on opportunities because I don't believe in myself as much as I should. And it holds me back from releasing content because I'm like, oh, that's stupid or that's not funny. And I'm overly critical. Where these people, because they're aggressive and have a bit of an ego, they're constantly putting out content. And even if it's not bad, they're growing from the content that they're putting out and becoming better and better. So I think that's the part of the personality trait that allows them to thrive.
Right. I just learned about doing that, like where it's like, because I was thinking like, oh man, like self-conscious about like, for example, like I shoot my web series with my smartphone, and like a lot of it's like, oh man, I mean, I want to do it with nice cameras and stuff. I can't afford it, but I'm like, wait 1 second, I'm doing like 20 episodes now. Each episode's getting better and better, and it's like the limitations I have where I'm just shooting with my phone makes me a better filmmaker, because then I go, okay, let me pay more attention to the lighting. Let me pay more attention to like this or like, you know, that or that or that to maximize like what I'm using. And I'm thinking like, so when or if the time comes that I have a bigger platform with a show and I have money, it's going to be easy. You know, it's going to definitely be easier. Like if the biggest problem is, oh, we got to find a song to clear for this scene, then those aren't going to be problems. You know, like to other people who like had everything given to them, great. To me, I'm like, great. I'll find another song. I'm sure I can do that. It's like I've been hustling, making my content all this time, and it's got to the point where it's like second nature, where I'm just like, okay, boom, 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 boom.
You say that you would change these things and you would have done things a little different earlier on, but I feel like the path that you've taken has given you a unique perspective that, you know, has allowed you to become the comedian that you are today. And I feel like you might not have the connections or the skills that you've gained if you had not taken the path that you did take.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is more of a spiritual path now and a monetary path, but you know what, whatever. Maybe like ultimately, at least I know like I'm using my talents in a way to benefit instead of like drain. So I'll take that.
I don't know. I don't see it as a bad thing. Like, and it's not like it's too late. There are people who didn't gain notoriety, assuming that that's what you want, until much, much later in life. So you still have time.
I don't need notoriety. I just want to be like, I just want to be compensated for my art regularly, so I don't have to like have other jobs or worry about rent. But I mean, at this point though, like I'm good. You know, like I don't even care about being like, oh, I'm the most famous comedian in the world. I just want to have my niche. I've got my niche. I just want to push my niche and put it to like people who dig me. You know what I'm saying? And then like if all you need is like maybe like what 10,000 to 100,000 people who dig you.
Yeah.
And they're willing to like spend like $5 a year on you in some form of way, and you'll be all right.
You're exactly right. That's all it takes. I don't need to be Kevin Hart.
Right.
I just want to be a comedian who's happy and able to provide for my family. That's all I want.
Yeah.
So that's cool. All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you for coming on the show. Like, you know, I'm glad that you were here and you were able to do this. Before, we have a tradition here on the Revisionary Podcast, right? I didn't tell you this beforehand because I wanted to catch you off guard.
Who'd you sleep with, Todd, last night? Myself? Oh, no. Not spicy enough.
So we actually have someone here who claims that they're a former lover, and these are your kids. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Benvolio, my long lost son.
No. So we like to end the show on a wholesome note, even though that wasn't wholesome. But I like to ask people like, what's one like childhood memory that always puts a smile on your face, or a very happy moment, or a quick happy story from your childhood that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Yeah, this is like a weird like moment that happened when I was a kid, and it always stuck with me. And it's like one of those moments where you're like, wow, is this like magic, or is this real, or whatever? So I'm with my grandma, right? I think it was like my birthday, and I had like a balloon, and it was like floating in the air. I lost the balloon because it went up on a tree, and I was like, oh man, my balloon's on a tree. How am I gonna get it? And it was just me and my grandma, and she's like, I don't know how to get this. So a Hasidic guy comes over, right? Like a Hasidic Jewish guy. He comes over. He's like, oh, is that your balloon? I'm like, yeah. So he puts like 2 or 3 sticks together on the floor, and then he actually gets the balloon, and then he gets it to me. And then I think like my grandma was supposed to say like thank you to him, but like he disappears.
What?
Yeah. Then I was like, oh, did he just disappear? Like, yeah. And I think my grandma was like, that was Jesus. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Then I thought like, wait, but why would Jesus come as a Hasidic Jew?
I mean, Christianity didn't exist, but that's neither here nor there.
Is Jesus Hasidic? Maybe Jesus is Hasidic. Maybe that was it. I don't know. But it was like a cool little weird like a miracle of like, like magic and like something normal, like a miracle and something very normal and,
So you mean to tell me you've met Jesus and you're still grinding it out in the streets of New York City? I don't know, Todd.
You don't know if I met Jesus, though. My grandma said that, though. I think I just met like a magical Hasidic guy.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
That's different. Yeah.
That's fair. Thank you for coming. Do you have any last words for our revisionists?
Yeah. Yo, I just want to say, Juan, thank you again, man. You're very talented. Yeah, this is a fun interview. This is like a fun interview where like, I really got to explore and like think about things, and I appreciate that. It's a lot of podcasts. It's just like we're just talking to fill up time. This is a good podcast. I really appreciate it. And if you guys can check out my content, youtube.com/MontyKillavision, where you can check out my web series PN and Friends. It's very funny. And also, I'm on Instagram Live on the UG Comedy Show page. You can watch my nightly UG Comedy Show quarantine talk show. And twitch.tv/UG Comedy Show, where you can watch the streaming shows on my, just Google Todd Montesi. You'll find me, ToddMontesi. And there's a magical world waiting for you.
Well, thank you so much. And we appreciate having you. Until later, Revisionaries. Let's say goodbye to Todd.
Thank you. Peace.
The Revisionary Podcast.
I want to say thank you again to Todd for coming on the Revisionary Podcast and speaking to us about his comedic journey thus far. As always, we like to pick a charity or an organization to support at the end of every episode. So, for this episode, I'm gonna ask you to please support RealWorks. And basically what they do is they mentor and inspire and empower underserved New York City youths and teach them how to share their stories through filmmaking and other creative projects. So I think that that's a pretty neat thing to do. And I think art is important. I think we should support the youth and push them towards art and let them be creative. And that's how we get interesting new stories. So thank you again for listening to the Revisionary Podcast. As always, please subscribe and like us and follow us on all social media. And I'm your host, Juan Carlos. Thank you again.
This